The portal shimmered with a sharp pulse before Voyd and Jaida stepped through its threshold. Their feet met solid ground with a distant echo, a sound that seemed to ring unnaturally loud in the profound silence of their destination. Ahead, a vast hall stretched into the distance, carved entirely from deep crimson crystal that pulsed with a faint, eternal luminescence. Every surface gleamed, reflecting their anxious forms back in distorted, elongated silhouettes, leading towards a set of colossal doors at the far end. They both drew a deep, shuddering breath, the air thick with an indefinable metallic tang. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining. Determination hardened their features, yet beneath it, a palpable tremor of nerves ran through them both. This was it, the end of their long journey. We're here. We're really here. Voyd murmured, his voice barely a whisper, his gaze sweeping slowly from side to side, as if searching for an unseen threat or a hidden escape. His grip tightened unconsciously on Jaida's hand. Jaida nodded, her own eyes wide, her cosmic energy subtly cracking and humming around her. Yeah, feels like it took ages, she admitted, her voice a little steadier. Meeting friends and enemies, seeing different worlds and creatures, all these lands, all these... It's all led to this. The weight of their adventure, their struggles, and their unwavering hope settled upon them as they neared the imposing doors. Jaida, Voyd began, turning to face her fully, his hand reaching for her other one, holding both tightly now. His eyes, usually so vibrant, were shadowed with a mix of fear and profound tenderness. Whatever happens next, whatever may be waiting for us beyond this door, I just want to say that... His gaze locked with hers, deep and unwavering. I care about you. So very much. You're the most extraordinary, kindest, most wonderful person in the entire universe. You are my angel, Jaida. You shone light upon me when no one else ever would. A soft, emotional smile touched Jaida's lips, her eyes glistening. I needed you to know that. Just in case we don't... Jaida cut him off, launching herself into his arms. She held him fiercely, burying her face into his shoulder. And you? She whispered, her voice muffled but resolute. Are my knight in shining armor. You've trusted and seen in me what no one else saw. She spoke with a stutter, a faint purple glow blooming between their chests, shimmering wonderfully. Their soulbind hummed with a quiet power. Pulling back slightly, Jaida looked up at him, a hopeful, wistful note in her voice. When all this is done, we're gonna sit down on the living room couch, turn on some cool movies, and eat tons of junk food. How does that sound? Voyd's tense expression softened, a genuine smile breaking through. Sounds like a plan. With renewed, albeit fragile, resolve, they turned back to the massive doors, reaching out to push them open. But before their hands could make contact, the colossal crystal slabs began to move, groaning softly as they swung inwards on their own, revealing the interior beyond. The room that unfolded before them was stark, breathtaking in its desolate grandeur. Its vastness swallowed the remaining hall, stretching endlessly in all directions. Towering columns of the same crystal material supported the impossibly high ceiling, their surfaces riddled with jagged fractures that snaked like frozen lightning. Motes of pure energy, like living starlight, drifted through the chilling air, catching the hazy glow of the static fire that burned within crystal torches mounted on the columns. Ahead, along the far wall, a monumental window offered a panoramic vista of the Banished Realm itself, a churning expanse of swirling chaos. It was then that Voyd and Jaida froze, their breath caught in their throats. Standing tall, silhouetted against the view of the Banished Realm, was him. Lotus, the Red Death. His form, a chilling, humanoid, cube-headed being of sharp angles and crystal flesh, radiating an aura of immense crimson power. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped firmly behind his back, his gaze fixed on the apocalyptic view outside. He did not flinch, did not acknowledge their entry into his domain. With breath still shaken, the duo summoned their weapons. A searing blue light erupted around Voyd's hand as his Nova Blade materialized, humming with contained energy. Beside him, Jaida's formidable hammer solidified in her grasp, its surface glinting off the room's eerie glow. Cautiously, they stepped into the vast space, their footsteps, despite their efforts to be silent, echoing softly in the oppressive quiet. Still, Lotus did not move. Not until he gently tilted his cube-shaped head.
Voyd, Jaida, welcome. I've been expecting your arrival.
His voice was eerie and chilly, filling the immense chamber without effort. It was unsettling in its lack of emotion. The duo stopped, their breath stilled completely, as the enemy slowly turned to face them. The orb of yellow embedded in his chest pulsed brighter, and his single golden eye lowered into an unamused stare that seemed to pierce through their very souls. A long moment stretched between them, thick with unspoken tension. Lotus stood, an embodiment of absolute, unfeeling certainty, while the two young heroes, despite their weapons and courage, trembled ever so slightly.
What do I say to you?
Voyd finally managed, his voice low, raw with suppressed fury and sorrow. Lotus tilted his head again, a gesture of almost casual indifference, before shrugging his jagged crystal-spiked shoulders. The moment was so disarmingly ordinary. It only amplified the unsettling nature of his presence.
I don't know, to be honest. I was thinking the same thing. What do I say to you?
He slowly turned back the gaze out over the Banished Realm, as if their confrontation was a mere interruption. Jaida's face hardened into a stern glare. Well, I know what to say. You're at the end of the line, Lotus. Your tyranny ends today. She proclaimed boldly, gripping the handle of her hammer until her knuckles were white. Yeah, my friend here is right, Voyd added, stepping forwards, pressing his thumb to his chest, his voice cracked with emotion. Today you're gonna pay for all the worlds you destroyed, all the pain and suffering you have caused. His voice rose to be a shout, grief bubbling in the surface. You're gonna pay for the life you robbed me of! My family, my friends, my people. Tears welled in his eyes, cascading freely down his cheeks. Your genocide, without reason, ends today! He finished, his voice weakening but his resolve unwavering. Lotus turned, looming over his shoulder, his golden eye fixed on Voyd.
Without reason?
He asked, looking back out into the turbulent sky.
Of course. That's what you would think. Why would they tell the whole story when they would rather banish and try to wipe your memory from existence?
He lifted his gaze to the swirling, storm-wrecked heavens of the Banished Realm.
Without reason,
he repeated, a scoff escaping his eye.
I have reason to do what I do.
Really? Care to explain why? Jaida challenged, her voice sharper, demanding. Lotus continued to stare at the stormy sky, a distant look in his eye.
Child, I know not of where I came from. Someone, or something, I wish I knew, sent me to this universe from beyond the veil of all you know. My first memory was a sense of purpose.
He lowered his gaze to his own crystal hands, flexing them slowly.
I landed in the mortal realm world of Jalkarta. I was only a baby. The people of this world took me into their kingdom, raised me as one of their own.
He looked back up, his voice tinged with a strange, almost nostalgic sadness.
They called me beautiful, a gift from the stars. For a time, I was truly happy in this home. Until one day, everything changed.
He finally turned fully, his eyes straining, his form radiating a subtle flicker of static electricity.
As I aged, my abilities developed. My true nature showed itself. I realized that I was not a part of the rules in this universe, a cog that never belonged. I was never meant to be here. An infection.
Voyd and Jaida stood firm, weapons ready, listening to his chilling confession.
The people that once called me beautiful, they looked up in horror as my mere existence alone caused a terrible plague of static. Jalkarta died, and the people I once looked up to as my guardians turned on me.
His body spiked with static rage, crystal edges sharpening.
They tried killing me. I pleaded. I begged. But in the end, my inability to function within this universe was their end. I traveled from world to world, pleading for help that never came. No one came.
Lotus clenched his massive crystal fists, the sound like grinding rock.
Everywhere I went, death and abuse followed. I tried so hard to find help, but all I would receive were screams.
He closed his large eye, his shoulders slumping slightly as he recalled the desolate memories.
From my despair, my tears bloomed my beautiful people. People that looked up to me with that same wonder my old family had.
His golden eyes snapped open, glaring at the duo, all vulnerability gone.
I didn't ask to be in this situation, but your precious little universe left me no choice. On the day I saw my own kind rise from my sorrow, I knew what that purpose was for. I wasn't sent here to live and love. I was sent here to conquer.
Lotus's voice boomed, rattling the very columns of the hall, making Voyd and Jaida involuntarily step back.
Of course, your precious realms united and trapped me and my beautiful people here for several lifetimes. But they were foolish to think the banished realm would adhere to an energy that didn't belong. Oh, your people were so proud of locking us away, laughing as we screamed for freedom, cheering as our babies cried for sun. There's a reason why I struck Salvaheim first, boy.
Lotus took a menacing step forward, his shadow engulfing them, his harsh gaze fixed on Voyd.
All to just see the fear and pain come back to haunt them for their treacherous acts upon my kin.
Voyd and Jaida stared in horror at the towering being, who now eyed them with a terrifying glint of triumph.
There is reason,
Lotus continued, stepping back and raising his arms in a gesture of grand declaration.
It is my will to simply exist in peace with my people, but in order to do as such, I must wipe the slate clean to start anew.
He lowered his arms, his gaze intense.
I dubbed myself Lotus for that reason. It originates from the legend of the Lotus Flower, a tale about rebirth. For I am the harbinger of a new world.
Lotus glared hard at Voyd and Jaida, who in turn glared back with renewed intensity, gritting their teeth and raising their weapons, ready for the inevitable. You're a goddamn psychopath. What happened to you wasn't right, but that didn't give you the excuse to enact that very torture upon others. Upon me. Voyd stated, a cold tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek.
You're a lot like your mother. Noble. Bold.
Lotus's gaze softened for a fleeting moment as he traced a finger across a prominent scar, the one Celeste had left on the side of his face. His golden eye returned to its hard stare.
But you're way out of your league.
He took a step back, resuming his passive stance.
I've got to be brutally honest with you kids. Your outcome of defeating me is a very low bar. So I'll offer you one last chance.
Lotus gazed at them firmly, his voice devoid of threat, yet chillingly dismissive.
Just walk away. Accept your fates. Either way, your stories will both end the same.
But the duo didn't hesitate. They stepped forward in unison, their combined will a tangible force. You may have beaten many others, but you won't beat us. We have the soulbind, loser! Jaida declared with fierce determination, the purple light between her and Voyd flaring brighter. Yeah, this ends once and for all! Voyd added, his voice firm, his Nova Blade humming in anticipation. Lotus stared blankly, his golden eye utterly unamused, lacking any flicker of fear.
Soulbind? Really?
He asked, a small, humorous chuckle escaping him, a sound like cracking crystal.
Alright. If this is what you want, then I'd best not disappoint. You did spend the last 5 years wanting to get to this point after all.
Lotus boomed, rolling his massive shoulders with a casual indifference. He adopted a neutral stare, his form radiating coiled energy.
Let's see how long Mommy's little warrior can last.
Within an instant, a hum vibrated through the air. Without warning, Lotus levitated effortlessly. Before Voyd and Jaida could even process the impossible sight, The colossal room itself buckled and tore, erupting into 1,000 razor-sharp crystal shards with a thunderous crack that seemed to rip through the very fabric of reality. The entire structure blasted outwards, accelerating to the speed of a jet, leaving shimmering, chaotic trails across the desolate skies of the banished realm. Voyd and Jaida screamed, their voices swallowed by the roaring wind and the grinding of crystal. They were wrenched apart, each shredded on a frantic shard of the large room, hurled through the swirling storm. Far back, in the eye of this crystal hurricane, Lotus drifted with an unnerving tranquility. His arms were casually crossed, his single glowing eye narrowed into a chilling glare of pure disappointment, as if this entire cataclysmic display was merely an inconvenience. Struggling against the violent updraft that threatened to rip them from their precarious perches, Voyd and Jaida fought for balance, their eyes wide, still reeling from the sudden shock. They scanned the chaos. Jaida, her hair whipping wildly around her face, shrieked, "Oh my god!" She dug the top half of her hammer into the unstable crystal beneath her, seeking purchase. Beside her, Voyd, his own platform swaying precariously, muttered, "By Matera!" as his helmet materialized over his head with a soft hiss.
"Be ready for anything, both of you!"
Jet barked, his voice a sharp, urgent counterpoint to the howling wind. The duo braced themselves, their gazes locked onto the unmoving, malevolent figure ahead. Lotus's voice, calm despite the surrounding tempest, sliced through the air.
This is what you're up against, kids. It's been fun, but I'm done.
As he spoke, he slowly raised a hand. An ominous crimson glow bloomed beneath the crystal platforms where Voyd and Jaida stood, radiating an instant, searing heat that singed the air. Knowing the telltale sign of imminent destructive energy, Voyd reacted with the speed of pure instinct. He shot his arms out, one hand snagging Jaida's arm with a bruising force, the other latching onto a larger, more stable crystal mass nearby. With a powerful, desperate yank, he launched them clear just as their previous platforms detonated in blinding flashes of static-laced red light, vaporizing into the chaotic dust cloud. "Holy crap!" Jaida screamed, her words strained as the violent wind continued to batter her. Her hair whipped around her face, momentarily blinding her. Lotus, that terrifying calm unwavering, seemed to twitch his head, a subtle shift in his expression that hinted at an invisible frown. Instantly, another pair of crystal platforms ahead of them began to pulse with the same red energy. This time, it was Jaida's turn to act. With a desperate burst of her power, she warped them, a blur of shimmering energy, to another solid crystal mass just moments before the previous ones exploded with a deafening crump. Lotus remained unimpressed, his glowing eye fixed on their frantic evasions. Then, with a slow, deliberate grace, the Red Death raised both of his arms. The very air around the remaining crystal platforms hummed with a dizzying energy, and one by one, they began to spiral wildly, rotating with terrifying speed within the vortex. Voyd and Jaida clung to each other, their bodies shaking, their stomachs lurching as their current platform spun around and around. Ahead, Lotus remained a serene, unmoving god in the heart of the storm. "What's happening?" Jaida exclaimed, her voice thin with panic, her grip on Voyd tightening. "Don't know, just stay close," Voyd called back, his voice strained but resolute. As their platform continued its dizzying rotation, he spotted a larger, less affected crystal mass below them. Taking advantage of the force, he swung them in a desperate arc, launching them towards their next precarious refuge. All around them, the air was thick with glittering, shattering debris of countless crystal fragments. They leapt and maneuvered, a frantic dance of survival across the disintegrating landscape. Lotus, watching their every move with an unnerving, patient, predatory gaze. Each jump brought them closer, a desperate linear charge against the entity of unimaginable power. At last, in a unified, desperate leap, they soared through the air, their weapons, Jaida's hammer, Voyd's sword, raised high, ready to strike the unmoving being where he floated. But the glitch being was already one step ahead. With a subtle tilt of his head, the pulsating orb embedded within his chest flared, illuminating with an intensity that threatened to blind them. From its core, a blinding pulse of raw, glitching energy erupted. Before they could react, before their weapons could even begin their descent, Lotus, Voyd, and Jaida were gone. They didn't just disappear, they shattered through the sky, leaving behind a jagged, shimmering tear in reality, a swirling vortex of fractured light and sound. They were no longer in the desolate skies of the Banished Realm. They were back in the Matter Realm, back at Salvaheim. Lotus, with a flash of his controlled motion, flipped himself in a graceful downwards dive. Voyd and Jaida, however, were left flailing, disoriented and helpless, plummeting through the open sky. Looking down, fear seized their throats. They saw it. A colossal matter power station, its metal superstructure steaming, its massive turbines spinning, seemingly miles below them. Quickly, Voyd pulled Jaida into his tight embrace as the ground rushed up to meet them. Jaida glimmered with effort, and with a final desperate burst of warp energy, they vanished, reappearing an instant later. They crashed hard, not to the ground, but onto a vast warm metal steaming surface, the impact jarring every bone in their body. Voyd and Jaida lay sprawled on a grated platform, groaning as their battered bodies protested against their abrupt arrival. Both now had torn clothing, scrapes blossoming across their exposed skin. They pushed themselves up, eyes wide and disoriented. Around them rose the skeletal, colossal architecture of the power plant that speared skywards for several stories. Platforms of dull, reinforced metal crisscrossed its interior, riddled with humming workstations and conduits that pulse with contained energy. Everywhere, intricate spark runes glowed faintly, etched in the golden plates adorning the gargantuan structure. But it wasn't the scale that seized their attention. It was the river of power flowing beneath their feet. A vast, churning torrent of light and dark matter, a molten, shimmering substance snaked through the plant's core, feeding in and out of a massive central reactor. Its radiant heat was almost excruciating, a palpable force that pressed against their skin, threatening to boil the very air they breathed. They were impossibly high and low at the same time in the heart of Salvaheim's energy core. "You okay?" Voyd rasped, his voice rough. He reached out, his hand brushing dust and debris from Jaida's shoulder. Jaida coughed a dry, painful sound. "Yeah, are you?" Her gaze, still somewhat dazed, swept over him, checking for injuries. Voyd nodded a sharp, quick motion. His eyes narrowed as they adjusted to the infernal glow. We're back in Salvaheim?" Jaida asked, her breath catching as her gaze pierced the haze. Through the swirling motes of light and dark matter, she could discern the distant, iconic silhouette of the kingdom's castle. A low, resonant voice, like static electricity given form, then cut through the din.
"Figured it would be a worthy spot to commence our long-awaited battle. The place where this little nightmare of yours began."
The pronouncement sent a jolt of ice through their veins. Voyd and Jaida whirled their heads, snapping upwards, muscles tensing. Standing upon a higher ledge, silhouetted against a chaotic burst of golden light, the Red Death stared down at them. His gaze was primal.
"This all ends where it started. Poetry, my friends,"
he added, his voice dripping with venom. Then, with sickening deliberation, Lotus outstretched his left crystal arm. To Voyd and Jaida's horrified disgust, they watched as it suddenly split in half, a grotesque fissure dividing the space between Lotus's two long fingers. The bone inside, exposed for a fleeting, horrifying moment, then snapped back together with a wet crack, rapidly changing hue. It deepened to an obsidian black, now wrapped in a malevolent red haze and protruding spikes. The bone began to mutate, protruding outwards, elongating and growing sharper, faster, until it became an obsidian blade that pulsed with dark energy. As the bone finished its dreadful transformation, Lotus's arm reconnected in a snap, once again whole, now clutching his newly forged blade of darkness. Without warning, he leapt. His descent was a blur, a crimson streak against the shimmering river of matter. He raised the blade high and plunged it into the grated platform. A powerful red pulse of static energy erupted outwards, a concussive wave that slammed in the Voyd and Jaida, blowing them backwards with brute, unholy force. The very structure of the power plant groaned. No, the entire kingdom of Salvaheim, hundreds of feet around them, shook with a seismic tremor. The molten matter in the river below them erupted like angry geysers, great plumes of light and dark soaring skywards, as the power surge suddenly reactivated the plant's dormant systems. Emergency alarms blared, an oppressive cacophony that mingled with the roar of the reactivated machinery. Lotus stood amidst the chaos, blade held casually at his side, an expression of a cold satisfaction on his face.
That was for Solidius,
he growled, his eye fixed on the struggling teens.
Now, show me what my people have been so afraid of.
Voyd and Jaida, deeply terrified yet defiant, began their assault. Voyd, fueled by a surge of desperate adrenaline, lunged first, his own blade flashing blue. It met Lotus's obsidian weapon with a deafening crang. The impact sending a violent surge of blue and red energy blasting outwards, momentarily illuminating their grim faces. Simultaneously, Jaida, a blur of motion, warped through the superheated air, appearing above Lotus. Her hammer, a blur of cosmic energy, descended in a powerful arc towards his head. Lotus, with a casual flick of his wrist, released another pulse of static, a focused burst that slammed in the void, sending him skidding backwards, momentarily stunned. Then, with terrifying grace, he raised his dark blade, parrying Jaida's descending hammer. The clash sent a jarring vibration up her arm, flinging her backwards through the searing air. Voyd, spitting a curse, pushed himself back onto his feet, glaring at his tormentor. Jaida too scrambled up, a glob of blood spilling from her lip as she regained her footing. Lotus's gaze settled on Voyd, a taunting glint in his eye. Gritting his teeth, Voyd summoned a Nova Rune, a burst of pure energy into his hand, a desperate light against the enroaching darkness. He charged, a cry of rage on his lips. Jaida, recovering once again, leapt forwards, her hammer arcing for a decisive blow. Lotus moved with terrifying speed. He didn't just dodge, he flowed like a liquid shadow. He leapt and rolled over Voyd, weaving back around in a dizzying display of agility and slashing low at Jaida in a brutal downwards arc. Her shriek was cut short as the blow connected, sending her careening, crashing in the void with a bone-jarring force. The two teens stumbled back, shouting in pain and frustration. Lotus stood over them, an aura of utter superiority radiating from him.
Oh, come on. Is that all you got?
He drawled, before lunging back at them with renewed ferocity.
Give me a real fight.
Driven by desperation, Voyd and Jaida sprang onto their toes, commencing a ballet of survival. The dance exploded with flashes of blue, red, and orange, their movements so fast they became mere blurs of motion in the streaming, superheated light of the power plant. With a sudden, brutal snag, Lotus grabbed Voyd, his crystal fingers digging into the spark's arm. Voyd, reacting instinctively, activated his arm blasters, twin beams of charged energy firing directly into the glitch's chest. Lotus grunted, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. Jaida, coming back around with a surge of cosmic energy, transformed her hammer into a shimmering ethereal lasso. She wrapped it around Lotus's head and yanked back with all of her might. The combined attacks, the blaster fire, and the wrenching force of the lasso threw the Glitch King off balance. Voyd, seeing his chance, pulsed with a raw energy. His horns glowed, and he unleashed a focused burst of spark essence. The mix of his and Jaida's abilities created a chain reaction, a violent purple soulbind explosion that erupted with concussive force, blowing Lotus backwards. He slammed into the reinforced wall of the power plant's base with a shuddering crash. The duo stood defiant, chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Lotus, unhurried, slowly pushed himself back to his feet. He raised a hand, touching the side where Jaida's lasso had connected. He then lowered his hand, a sliver of luminous yellow blood shimmering on his crystal fingertips. A slow, devious, happy expression curved upon his eye.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Lotus shed his casual posture, suddenly transforming into a coiled spring of aggression. He began to sprint at Voyd and Jaida, moving like a linebacker, his body low and powerful. Then, he leapt forwards into a terrifying dive, his crystal mass shifting and transforming. His form blurred, crystallizing and reforming into a rolling tire of jagged, razor-sharp spikes. Voyd and Jaida's eyes widened in horror as Lotus roared towards them, picking up speed like a living, spinning wheel of pure destruction. Jaida, thinking with lightning speed, grabbed Voyd, pulling him close, and warped them out of the path of the oncoming projectile. They reappeared a mere dozen feet away, rolling around just in time to see Lotus drift back over, shifting directions with impossible ease, and beaming directly for them again. "Jaida, get out of the way!" Voyd cried, throwing her aside with a surge of a horn pulse. Once she was clear, he summoned a Nova Rune at the last desperate second. Lotus crashed in the void with the force of a freight train, sending the spark flying upwards. Jaida landed hard, skidding across the grated floor, her heart a cold knot in her chest. "No!" she screamed as Voyd slammed onto the higher platforms, Lotus bouncing after him, a deadly predator on the hunt. Voyd landed hard, tumbling and rolled onto his hands and knees. Voyd stood, his mask visor cracked and spiderwebbed, his clothes torn and smoldering. Lotus landed before him, his body snapping back into its humanoid form, the obsidian blade reappearing in his grasp.
And that was for fracture,
he declared, his voice cold and devoid of mercy. He began swinging, pushing Voyd further and further into a narrow, twisting corridor of pipes and catwalks. Voyd stared up at the larger being, his own blade meeting Lotus's with a desperate clang. A cold sweat beaded on his brow, trickling down his temples as the relentless assault continued. "I won't let you hurt anybody else!" Voyd boasted, a desperate challenge echoing in the confined space.
Is that right?
The Glitch King sneered, a glint of amusement in his eye. Then, with a movement too fast to track, he snagged Voyd's sword from his grasp. With a casual squeeze of his hand, Lotus crushed the blade, reducing it to mere energy particles. Voyd gasped, immediately deploying his arm blades concealed in his gauntlets to deflect another devastating swing. But the impact was too great. His arm blades, too, shattered into useless fragments. "Oh no," Voyd whispered, looking up at the towering villain, only to be met by a swift, crunching punch squarely to his face. He reeled, falling backwards.
You're in way over your head, baby horns,
Lotus boasted, his foot pressing down on Voyd's chest, pinning him. Panic swelled in Voyd's heart, a bitter taste in his mouth. Thinking fast, he deployed a flashbang, tearing it from his bag and tossing it. The small bomb detonated with a blinding, ear-splitting flash, dazing Lotus and giving Voyd the precious seconds he needed to scramble back to his feet. He stumbled backwards, disoriented but free, his arm cannons glowing as he fired blindly into the lingering haze. Before he knew it, Lotus rushed back out of the lingering light, moving on all fours, his hands and legs transformed into pointy razor-sharp spikes, akin to those of Calamity. With a sharp thwack, Voyd was slashed aside, his clothing ripped once more, a spray of luminous blue blood arcing through the air. He landed belly first, gasping, trying to crawl away and heal. Lotus reverted to his bipedal form once again, standing tall, approaching with slow, deliberate steps. He hoisted his obsidian sword onto his back, its sharp edges resting against his crystal spikes.
You're the one that sent fear through my people. Really?
Lotus asked, his footsteps heavy and menacing.
You're just a weak little runt, trying to be just like his mama. A mama that fell to my blade.
The words struck Voyd harder than any physical blow. His blood ran cold. Before he could react, Lotus stepped on the Voyd's back, pinning him down with crushing force.
Let's see how durable you really are,
he said, snagging Voyd's arms. To the spark's horror, Lotus began to slowly pull, stretching both of his arms backwards, far beyond its natural limits. Voyd's face contorted into a silent, agonizing shout, a desperate grunt escaping his lips as Lotus, with chilling intent, began to rip his arms out of his sockets. The glitch pulled Voyd's limbs to their absolute limits. Voyd's sweater ripped, and the seams in his arms began to part, revealing a horrifying, glowing blue flesh energy within. However, before Lotus could make the spark an armless, broken being, a furious shout ripped through the air. Leave him alone! Jaida warped in, a blur of righteous rage, and plunged her cosmic sword, now shimmering with a vengeful orange energy, deep into Lotus's chest from the back. The impact made him roar in pain, his grip on Voyd's arm loosening completely as he plummeted with Jaida several stories down into the infernal depths of the power plant. The landing was anything but graceful. Jaida and Lotus slammed into the metal depths of the power plant, the impact jarring through their bones. Lotus, with a guttural grunt, drew his sword again and swiped at Jaida, knocking her further away. She landed with another jarring thud. As Lotus followed with a powerful plunge of his blade, the metallic structure beneath them erupted in a violent blast of energy. This time, the shockwave rippled through the entire power plant, making it shudder precariously. Suddenly, a shrill alarm pierced the air, a disembodied voice booming from hidden speakers.
Warning, support beams have been compromised. Evacuate the facility immediately.
A wave of cold dread washed over Jaida as she scanned their surroundings. The floor beneath them was no longer stable. It was sinking. The entire power plant was groaning, being swallowed by the molten inferno raging below. Oh God, she whispered, the words catching in her throat as geysers of molten gold and dark, swirling energy erupted around her and Lotus.
Why, you cheeky little vessel.
He sneered, his voice laced with a dangerous, almost playful malice. His eye began to glow with a searing yellow light.
You're lucky I can't kill you myself. I've got a deal to make good on.
A sharp beam of pure energy lanced out from his eye, aimed directly at Jaida. She reacted instinctively, her body phasing in and out of reality in rapid succession, a dizzying dance of warps that saw her narrowly evade each blast. Lotus chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that did little to ease Jaida's growing fear. With another warp, she materialized her bow, and an arrow of pure cosmic energy streaked towards Lotus. To her horror, he caught it mid-flight, his grip impossibly firm. With a sickening spin, he hurled the energized arrow back at her. Jaida scrambled, a shimmering cosmic shield materializing just in time to deflect the projectile, but the force of the impact sent her stumbling backwards. Molten matter, thick and vicious, began to seep through the cracks in the platform where they stood. The structure was undeniably sinking faster. Noticing this, Lotus began to ascend, his movements unnervingly agile as he clambered like a great ape towards the upper levels of the doomed facility. But as he climbed, his old challenger entered the fray. Voyd leapt forwards from the smoke and struck, sending Lotus tumbling back down. As they both descended, Voyd flipped through the air, his limbs extending to grasp Lotus by his shoulders. With a powerful retraction of his limbs, he brought his feet together and executed a diving stomp directly into Lotus's glowing yellow chest. The glitch let out a howl of pure agony as he crashed back down to the platform where Jaida stood, the impact shaking the very foundations.
Freckles!
Voyd shouted, landing on the balcony above.
Voyd!
Jaida cried, warping upwards to meet him. They shared a brief, desperate embrace before pulling apart, their eyes fixed on Lotus, who was slowly, painfully rising to his feet.
These worlds, Voyd.
Lotus snarled, his voice distorted with rage as the lava rose around him.
These realms, all those friends you made, I will rip them apart one by one. That isn't a threat. That is a promise.
Suddenly, the glitch lunged forwards, his claws digging into the metal structure. He began to climb with a primal, violent series of pulls and leaps that made Voyd and Jaida's eyes widen in alarm.
I think we pissed him off,
Jaida said, a cold sweat breaking out of her brow.
You think?
Voyd replied, his voice strained. They both began to scramble upwards, Jaida warping and Voyd swinging with powerful arms, desperately trying to escape the rising danger. The power plant continued its descent, fading from view as the trio reached the top. They landed on solid ground, the battle resuming immediately. Lotus unleashed his I-beam, trying to strike down the evasive duo. They fought in tandem. When one attacked, the other distracted. Jaida zipped around Lotus like an annoying insect, her warping a constant nuisance, while Voyd slashed and diced at his form. Enraged, Lotus brought forth his spiked appendages, moving with the unnerving speed of a spider as he stabbed the ground, swiping at the two heroes. Voyd and Jaida weaved and dodged, their panic growing with each near miss.
How do we soul bind him exactly?
Jaida asked desperately, landing beside Voyd. Voyd stammered, his gaze fixed on the monstrous figure before him.
I don't know,
he admitted, as Lotus's wounds began to heal, his form reverting back to its undamaged state.
Barely even a scratch,
Lotus muttered, his voice a low growl.
Just grab him by the chest, that's all I can think of,
Voyd declared, summoning a pair of Nova Runes and flinging them at Lotus, who easily parried them. Working in unison, Jaida summoned her lasso again and snared Lotus by the head, yanking him forwards. Voyd unleashed another pulse of his horns, knocking the tyrant to his knees. Lotus grunted as he snagged Jaida's lasso, but Voyd was quick. He threw one of his bombs, which exploded against Lotus, causing him to falter. Seeing their chance, they advanced, pulling on the lasso and closing the distance. Jaida quickly warped Lotus in a tight restraint, trying to mimic what Pavnu had done to Calamity, while Voyd reached for the glowing orb in his chest.
Jaida, I need you with me now!
He cried as she landed beside him.
Hurry, hurry!
She urged, and together they both took hold of the orb. But to their dismay, Lotus let out a roar, releasing a new shockwave that sent them crashing hard. He stood back up, snapping the lasso and glaring with pure fury. The two looked up, their eyes a mixture of stern determination and growing panic, as Lotus prepared to fire his I-beam again. But then, their gaze shifted past them, and they gasped. Soaring in with incredible speed was Tater Tot. A smile of relief bloomed on their faces as the dragon nosedived towards Lotus. However, alerted by the beat of the dragon's wings, Lotus dimmed his eye and whirled around.
Sick 'em, boy!
Jaida yelled as Tater Tot readied himself to bite. But Lotus, as always, was one step ahead. He pivoted, snagging the Matter Dragon by the neck. To Voyd and Jaida's horror, they watched as Lotus, with impossible strength, swung Tater Tot up and over himself, performing a body slam on the dragon that dwarfed his own size. The impact was so powerful that it released a pulse of matter from the dragon's horns, blowing Voyd and Jaida back harder than before, sending them soaring through the air before they slammed into the side of a nearby mountain, knocking them unconscious for a brief, terrifying moment. Voyd's vision blurred as he watched Tater Tot struggle to regain his bearings. Lotus, battered and worn, landed before him. He groaned, his voice rough.
Jaida?
He asked, looking towards her as she weakly tried to stand, her cloak torn and her form injured. Lotus walked past Voyd, kicking him in the side. The spark grunted, his ribs most certainly broken, making it difficult to speak. Then, Voyd watched in horror as Lotus, with his massive hand, picked Jaida up and hoisted her over his shoulder. This galvanized Voyd to his feet. "Hey! Hey!" he cried, drawing Lotus's attention.
Oh, you want her? Come and get her.
The glitch said, then began the leap, covering vast distances from building to building, heading towards the castle. "No! Jaida!" Voyd shouted, his mind reeling, unsure of Lotus's intentions. Suddenly, Tater Tot, dazed and weak, flew down beside Voyd, lowering his head. The dragon, intelligent and perceptive, knew something was terribly wrong. Quickly, Voyd mounted the beast and snapped the reins. "Go! Go!" he urged, and Tater Tot took to the air, flying in pursuit of Lotus. The dragon flapped its wings with all of its might, but Voyd could sense its exhaustion. They soared awkwardly, watching as Lotus entered the castle through the massive open doors. Snapping the reins again with a desperate shout, Tater Tot reached the castle as well, but came to a jarring halt, crashing onto the landing balcony. Voyd was flung from the beast, tumbling across the platform while Tater Tot, unable to move another inch, roared in pain exhaustion. Voyd struggled to his feet, watched in horror as Lotus began marching towards the realm station inside, Jaida still in his grasp. Gathering his remaining strength, Voyd did the only thing he could. He ran. Pumping his legs, he sprinted towards the large doors, his body burning, his wounds throbbing, his lungs aching with each gasping breath. His eyes watered behind his mask. "Jaida!" he called out again, his voice hoarse as he made his way into the chamber. But as he crossed the threshold, he was suddenly struck by a painful, familiar sting. Voyd choked on a scream as he violently crashed to the floor, his body racked with excruciating pain. Orange cosmic energy, raw and malicious, seeped into his body, searing his flesh. He writhed, a silent howl tearing through his throat, then forced himself to turn, his vision blurring. What he saw stole the remaining breath from his lungs. There, suspended effortlessly in the heart of the chamber, was Viexa, her form an ethereal shimmer of cosmic power. Behind her, the very fabric of reality seemed to tear as several wraiths warped into existence, their spectral figures emerging from what was undeniably the terrifying void of the cosmic realm itself. Viexa's eyes, burning and calculating, fixed on Voyd with an intensity of pure, unadulterated hatred, a silent promise of eternal suffering. Above the agony, he heard Lotus's chilling cackle, a sound that grated on his already fraying nerves. His gaze flickered to Jaida, whose small hand weakly reached for him, her fingers twitching with desperate, futile effort. She dangled precariously from Lotus's colossal clawed hand, her struggles growing weaker with each passing second. "Blue?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath, as the wraith's sustained blast finally ceased. Voyd lay prone, his armor smoking, his body trembling, utterly depleted.
Thank you, my dear.
Lotus cut through the residual hum of power. He stalked towards the wraiths, his imposing form casting long, distorted shadows across the chamber.
Here you are, the girl as promised.
With a sickeningly casual gesture, he presented the fragile, weakened Jaida to the cosmic entities. VX's tendrils snaked out to entangle Jaida, pulling her deeper into their grasp. I do believe our deal is finished, Lord Lotus. Her voice, a cold whisper, echoed with cold finality.
No, Jaida,
Voyd rasped, his own hand reaching out, a pathetic plea.
Voyd.
Jaida's voice was a somber lament, tears streaming down her face as she was drawn away. Lotus, his movements devoid of haste, strode over the void. He knelt, not in reverence, but in triumph, his large crystal hands closing around Voyd's helmet. With a sharp, wrenching yank, he tore the mask clean off. Beneath, Voyd's face was revealed, slick with sweat and grime, his eyes wide with pain and fear.
Jet!
He whimpered.
Voyd, stay calm and remember your training.
He called. Lotus held the helmet aloft, his single yellow eye glinting with amusement.
I'm feeling nostalgia seeing this old thing. A shame its legacy ends here.
The glitching entity chuckled, a sound like grinding gears. Then with a brutal swing, he brought the helmet down, bashing Voyd's head with its reinforced visor. The force sent the young spark crashing sideways, his body bouncing off the cold floor.
No, stop, please, just leave him alone. Leave him alone.
Jaida's plea was ripped from her throat, her weakened struggles intensifying against VX's tendrils. Dropping the now dented and battered helmet, Lotus reached down again, his massive claws easily encompassing Voyd's battered form. The spark weakened and thoroughly beaten, lifted his head just enough to meet Jaida's gaze, tears streaming down his own eyes.
I suppose this is goodbye for now,
VX stated, her form beginning to swirl as she and the wraiths turned, preparing to dematerialize.
I suppose it is. Welcome to the Empire,
Lotus affirmed, his voice laced with satisfaction, as he too began to pivot away, intending to leave Voyd to his fate.
No! No!
Voyd cried out, a surge of adrenaline momentarily piercing through his pain as he desperately reached a hand towards Jaida.
Voyd!
Jaida echoed, her own hand reaching out in a mirrored image of despair. Suddenly, a brilliant purple light ignited within their palms. From their outstretched hands, two vibrant beams shot forth, lavender streams of pure energy that pulsed with undeniable connection. Both Lotus and VX staggered, forcefully whirled around as these two luminous ribbons combined, forming the ethereal shape of interlocked hands. It was their soul bind, their profound connection manifesting physically, preventing their full separation.
Gah!
VX hissed, her composure momentarily shattered.
What the hell?
Lotus boasted, digging his heels into the metal floor.
Ha! Let go of him, you little brat!
VX shrieked, her tendrils tightening around Jaida.
No! I won't leave him! I need him!
Jaida wept, her face contorted with grief. Voyd, focusing every ounce of his remaining will and power, fought to maintain the connection, his face a mask of strained effort.
Jaida! I'll find you!
He cried, the light in his palm flickering, his power slipping.
Do you hear me? I'll find you!
His voice cracked, a raw wail of a promise.
Voyd! Voyd!
Jaida sobbed in return, just as the delicate, vibrant stream connecting them shattered, forcefully broken apart by the combined fury of Lotus and the departing wraiths.
Ugh! Disgusting!
VX's growl was laced with revulsion. To Voyd's ultimate defeat, he watched helplessly as the cosmic entities vanished, dissolving into the void, taking Jaida with them.
Jaida, no.
Now with a harsh yank, Lotus dragged him around to face him.
Someone's in love. I remember when I was in love. She betrayed me, like all the others I trusted in Jakarta.
Lotus's voice dripped with false sympathy, a chilling prelude to the next act. He sees Voyd's arm, his eye fixed on the portal device. With one sickening squeeze, the device was crushed within Lotus's grasp, a shower of sparks and broken circuits. No! Voyd howled, a primal scream of despair. Lotus merely chuckled, then slowly began to walk towards the realm station.
I'll give you credit for one thing, kid. You've definitely got guts. Your mom would have been proud.
The glitching entity paused, turning his single eye back towards Voyd.
Now, our little song and dance has come to a close. To be honest, you have earned my respect in some regard. It would be a shame to give you a swift death. A true warrior deserves something far more expressive.
His gaze drifted to the activated control panel.
I'll leave you to the demons and monsters of the Underrealm. That way, when you die, you'll be in hell for eternity. Doesn't that sound worthy of a hero's death?
Lotus inquired, pressing an option to the Underrealm. A bright, swirling green vortex ripped open within the station's ring, sucking the very air from the chamber. Voyd struggled desperately, his weakened body thrashing, but Lotus's grip was absolute.
Now, while you're being torn apart, I'm gonna go to your little girlfriend's world, kill all of those friends of yours, and plow it over like all the other helpless planets you couldn't save.
Voyd choked on a breath, his blue eyes flaring with a sudden, furious light, burning with a renewed, desperate defiance. You! He snarled, a guttural sound of pure hatred. Lotus merely gave a final, mocking remark.
Farewell, Novason. Say hi to your mom for me.
And with that, he dropped Voyd and kicked him into the swirling maw of the portal, ridding himself of the troublesome spark once and for all. Lotus let out a long, satisfied sigh of relief, then calmly adjusted the control pad, switching the portal's destination from the desolate Underrealm to the familiar, vulnerable mortal realm. Earth, Aurora City. Back on Earth, the familiar glow of twilight had given way to the deep, velvet blanket of night over the city. Within Nock's bustling workshop, the mammoth garage door stood open, spilling warm light onto the street. Inside, a flurry of creative energy was underway. Nock, Kot, Jamie, Winona, Ellie, Coco, Toonie, and even Toby were putting the finishing touches on something truly special. The final versions of outfit designs the girls had drawn in a previous art class. Now real, physical designs. One was a sleek suit of blue and steel armor, gleaming under the workshop lights. The other, an elegant orange cloak-like attire, soft yet resilient. They look so good! They'll totally love it! Winona exclaimed, her face alight with excitement as she carefully smoothed out the large, intricately designed scarf that adorned the armor. I agree. Well done, everyone! Kot chimed in, high-fiving the ecstatic group. I don't know what I'm looking at, but it looks sick, Toonie said, with a characteristic smirk, his tail wagging a rhythmic beat against the workbench. Less corny, more badass costumes, my mangy mud friend, Ellie retorted as Coco, with a delightful giggle, sprinkled a final dusting of shimmering glitter onto a section of the orange cloak. Nock, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, stepped back to admire their handiwork. I hope she'll like it. They're padded, bulletproofed, and have all the safety measures I could imagine, he said with a nod. Yep. Not sure how Voyd would use the rocket chest, but hey, it's there, Kot also said. Why, it's just lovely. I especially love the little hearts on their chests, Jamie stated, her voice soft and appreciative, as they all looked on in awe at their creations. Suddenly, a sharp, insistent ring pierced the workshop's cheerful din. Everyone turned, their collective expressions shifting to immediate frowns. Parked in the open doorway of the garage, Francine sat astride her gleaming bicycle, her face a storm cloud of annoyance. Toonie, what the hey, dude? You were supposed to be meeting us at the dance recital after music lessons. Why are you here at this junk house? Francine's voice, sharp and accusatory, sliced through the air. A collective groan rippled through the group. Oh my god, can you just leave us alone? Winona shouted, crossing her arms in exasperation. Yeah, Toonie's with us tonight. Beat it, redhead. Ellie boasted, stepping forwards defiantly. Toonie, meanwhile, rubbed the back of his head, looking sheepish. The three adults, Naka and Jamie, merely exchanged confused glances. Oh, sorry, Francine. I just got caught up with... The wolf boy mumbled, avoiding her piercing gaze. What? You got caught up in what? Francine demanded, dismounting her bike and advancing towards him. Before Toonie could answer, a brilliant golden portal shimmered into existence within the workshop. That, Toonie finished, a slow smile spreading across his face, mirrored by the others. Hey, they're back! Coco happily shrieked, bouncing on her toes as everyone, save for the grumbling Francine, rushed towards the shimmering gateway. Ugh. Francine groaned, her arms crossed, clearly unimpressed. Hey guys! You aren't gonna believe what we got for ya! Winona called out, her voice now happy and spry, echoing into the portal. Yeah, losers, hurry up! We want to show ya! Ellie added, her excitement bubbling over. A blurry shape began to move within the golden light, slowly coalescing. Hurry up, you slowpokes! Coco giggled, practically vibrating with anticipation. At last, something passed through. It wasn't a triumphant return. Instead, Voyd's battered, damaged, and bloodied helmet soared through the air. It landed with a loud, metallic clunk, sliding across the garage floor, leaving a faint smear of blue until it came to a jarring halt at everyone's feet. Their joy and excitement died, simultaneously replaced by gasps and shocked, horrified expressions. Faintly, agonizingly, the mask's cracked visor flickered, revealing the AI face of Jet, a digital visage of pain and warning. The helmet gazed up at their wide, terrified stares, weakly uttering a single, chilling word. Run! As Jet's words faded into the stunned silence, everyone's heads snapped upwards. The true culprit for the portal's appearance now stepped through, imposing and terrifying. Lotus emerged in the Nox workshop, his crystal red form radiating menace. He was a stark, threatening silhouette against the lingering golden glow of the portal, his single burning yellow eye glaring down at the group below. Horror seized them, and they all instinctively took cautious steps back. Lotus's glowing eye slowly curved, twisting into a disturbingly happy, predatory expression as he lowered his massive clawed hand, beginning the reach towards the small, frozen group, who in that moment could only imagine the worst for what happened to the duo, and for what was about to happen to them.